Awesome, everybody. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us today. At Cypress, we've had a really exciting year of a lot of stuff going on, and in this one, we're just going to have a kind of a casual chat, fireside chat with some of the members of the Cypress team. So, kind of want to go over, maybe do some quick introductions for everybody. First up on my camera, I have Jordan. Take it away, Jordan.
What's up, everyone? Uh, my name is Jordan, and excited to be here to answer questions and to just it's just like a party. We're just hanging out. So
Mhm. Cool. Mark.
Hey everybody, my name is Mark. I'm on the component testing team here at Cypress. And yeah, really excited to be here. It's a big year for component testing. Lots to talk about.
Awesome. Sean, you're up.
Hey everybody, my name is Sean. I am on the support engineering team and I work with the experience team to provide new uh, stuff for those that are trying to learn more about Cypress.
Great. And last but certainly not least, we have Zach.
Hey folks, I'm Zach Lindquist. I'm a senior engineer on the Cypress app team. Really excited to talk about the awesome year we've had in Cypress land.
Great. And so I did realize I forgot to introduce myself at the very beginning. My name is Eli Lucas. I am the head of developer ecosystem at Cypress, and it's kind of our job to connect with developers and do events like this. First off, let's talk about like one of the very big things that happened this year, and that was the release of Cypress 10, or what we like to call the Unification project. Jordan, what do you got there?
yeah, so Cypress 10 for those of you who maybe haven't already upgraded. It was probably arguably like one of our biggest releases at Cypress we've ever made. A tremendous amount of effort from not only just our engineering teams, but across the entire organization. We really came together as an entire like company to help deliver, Cypress 10, and we're really excited to share it with you. And main things that brought us is a new type of testing, which we call component testing, and we'll get more in detail talking about that in a second. But in releasing that, it kind of opened up a conundrum, and where before, when we did testing, we just did like end-to-end testing. So we would just launch Cypress, and then you would get basically the list of specs that you can run test against, and you would just click on them. But now that we have this basically a different type of testing, we wanted a way to sort of unify and make the developer experience as a whole much more cohesive and just a better overall experience across the board. And so we basically launched this initiative called Unification. And the idea was basically a way to unify the testing experience so that it feels basically the same. You have the same consistent, rich developer experience, no matter what type of testing you're using, as well as just give the Cypress app a general facelift from a design standpoint, all that type of thing. So anyways, just wanted to, that's kind of the general basis of it. And then we're going to go to more into some of the very specific parts of that. But I want to hear from you, Mark. Like, what is one of your favorite features from Cypress 10?
So I wanted to call out the inline specs list, which if we go forward should be on the next slide here. And this is a part of the spec runner page. So you can get to it by clicking that specs button on the top in the middle of this screenshot. It sounds like some people are not hearing me. Is anybody definitely hearing me?
You're sounding good to me, Mark.
Okay, let's continue then. And sorry for the people who can't hear me. So this is a little touch, but it makes my workflow a lot better when I'm working with a lot of specs at the same time. So I can just pop this open. It's searchable. I can drill down to the folder and kind of work between, especially component specs. And this was a feature that was a part of the component testing alpha UI that got brought over and became part of the main Cypress test runner in V10. So I was really excited about this. I'm delighted every time I see a video that somebody makes where they're talking about Cypress, and I see they're like able to use this feature in their video. I think it's really cool. So I wanted to call it out as like a nice UI enhancement in the workflow in Cypress 10.
Great. And so Cypress 10 was a really big thing for this year, but I want to take a step back and talk about just some 2022 by the numbers. I want to go back to that slide real quick. So first off, we have reached a milestone of getting 4.6 million weekly downloads of Cypress over NPM. And that's a 50% year-over-year increase. And so that shows that people are still loving Cypress. We love to see people like adopting it and using it and whatnot. But yeah, huge growth there. We couldn't be more excited about it. And with that, GitHub stars, it got 7.4K GitHub stars in 2022. And we also have 87 new contributors to our main Cypress repo. Now, so some of those are internal Cypress employees, but definitely not all of them. So it shows that more and more community members are working on Cypress and open source with us. So that's pretty awesome. All right. So after 10 comes 11. And just a couple months ago, we launched Cypress 11. Mark, do you want to go into a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of things to talk about with Cypress 11. Obviously, component testing going to general availability was the main thing that changed in 11. And so the GA of component testing was driven through an alpha and a beta phase that gave us increasing amounts of information and confidence about how component testing should work. And this meant that as we reached the final stages of it, we were able to dial in a few other inconsistencies in the APIs, maybe some behavior between the different bundlers. So we're able to get a few changes in that were basically breaking changes, even though it was not yet a GA feature. So it seemed better to put it into a breaking release of Cypress. But to step back a little bit and look at what component testing actually means, I wanted to talk about kind of how Cypress component testing is different to the way you may already know component testing. And the main difference is that it runs in a real browser, not in a simulated node-based execution environment, which is a huge difference in the quality of the test. It's much more like users would actually use our applications. You also get like the Cypress API. So the exact way that you locate and assert about elements in a Cypress end-to-end test is the same in component testing. So there's an entire layer of like onboarding and learning and challenges around testing in a headless simulated environment for component tests that kind of goes away when you're able to mount them and test them with Cypress the way you're already used to for end-to-end. And that leads to this extra like almost sleeper thing where all of a sudden, not only are they easier to write because they're the same framework, but you can also start to have a stacked effect where the end-to-end and component tests can even talk to each other. If you have a complicated component like this on the screen is a color picker component from Vuetify, and Vuetify is testing this with Cypress component testing. Vuetify does not have a end-to-end situation because it's a component library, so component tests are probably all that it needs. But if you use a component like this and you want to test it end-to-end, I think of complicated forms or date pickers or sortable tables. We might have a component spec that details all the behavior of that, but the same commands could really be applied and extracted into a helper function that when it's time to enter end-to-end testing, you can reuse that exact code from that end-to-end test and be able to test the same thing without having to rewrite a complicated set of steps in a different language or a different testing framework. There were a few other big things with the GA of component testing. We got much more extensive docs with examples for everything. We got really good examples for Angular, Svelte, React, and Vue, which are the frameworks we support. And we kind of beefed up the automated configuration. So if you want to set up component testing, Cypress will detect your framework and bundler, and usually it's a very straightforward kind of wizard process. And I really like the overall, how should I put it, the developer workflow that I have in component testing now, where I get to just run the component by itself, not have to run the whole app. Super fast, I can test all the variations, and then later come around to an end-to-end test in a real life kind of user flow situation.
Okay, awesome. And we were having a little bit of technical difficulties getting Jess into the call, but I think she might be on now. Jess, are you with us?
Hi, Eli. A lot of technical difficulties, but I'm
No
back.
problem. Okay,
Yeah.
I'd like to turn it back over to Jess and let her introduce herself real quick, and yeah, continue from there.
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Jess. I'm on the product marketing team. I am supposed to be your hostess for today. So thank you, Eli, for taking over while I figured out how to access this platform. So really appreciate that. But yeah, on the product marketing team at Cypress, been here about 10 months and excited to dig into it all with you all. So we'll keep this moving right along. I know from Doc's perspective, there were some changes that went out with Cypress 11 just to really overhaul and improve the experience on the component testing side. Mark, can you talk about these?
Yeah, so this was all about creating kind of quick start guides and a similar experience to onboard to component testing, regardless of your framework. So you have specific docs. A lot of the concepts in component testing are general. So the actual assertions and everything are completely the same after you've mounted your component. But you're set up for mounting components, your styles, maybe some of your custom things, and then framework specific events and things you can hook into after mounting all need to be documented. And so separating these out by framework kind of avoids clutter and repetition, and we can focus on just kind of what you need as a user when you're coming in to figure out React or Vue or Svelte. How are you going to do it?
Fantastic. And off to the next slide. One of the things we also released in Cypress 11 is a way to make it easier for devs to get started with these create from component kind of features. So can you talk about this and yeah, share some updates since Cypress 11?
Yeah, so this is in component testing, we don't have something that is the same as the Cypress generated end-to-end tests, which if you use Cypress before, we can generate 15 or 20 tests that show you all different parts of Cypress and different commands, and they visit the example website of Cypress. So in order to have something that you can get up and running with quickly, still in the same spirit in component testing, we don't have an example component that there exists that we can mount for you, but we can create a component test based on a particular component that you point to. This is currently released for Vue. I can say now that it's coming soon for React, so watch out for that. And this gives you a component spec that will show up in the right place. It will import your component correctly, and it will mount it. It's not going to do everything that you could do to make that component look nice if you don't already have your CSS imported somewhere and things like that. But it gives you a solid start so that you can start to write your commands and your assertions immediately with an imported component that's all done the right way for your context. So over time, I'm sure we'll bring that to Angular and Svelte as well. I think it's a really useful feature, especially if you're just getting started with component testing and it's intimidating. The idea is, hey, it's your onboarding experience. You can make a new component. But I've actually used this in my day-to-day workflow because I really like this moment of, okay, go from Cypress, make a new spec, point at this file, then I can click through from Cypress to open that spec in VS Code, and I have everything I need to just write my test and work, and I like it a lot.
It definitely seems like a great tool for getting started with component testing. And speaking of getting started, if you go to the next slide, we also made some investments into improving the startup performance of the app. So I'll direct this one to Zach. Can you tell us about this one?
Yeah, this is so this demo that's playing here, I think was run on a very fast computer, but this is the culmination of over a year of research. We had to do a lot of work into like understanding Node and how it handles memory, and we actually made patches back to Electron to support this feature. But the end result is that we made the Cypress app startup over 85% faster in Cypress 11 in some cases. And you'll see this, especially a performance improvement on Windows and startup time. We know performance is really important to our users, and we're always trying to improve it, and this is just part of that. So it both improves startup performance locally and in CI. So you should see a benefit in CI because it'll take less time to start up Cypress Run for each job that you run. So performance improvements everywhere.
All right, and that wraps up Cypress 11. Those are the major highlights there. We'll move on to Cypress 12. So we've been working very hard the latter part of this year to squeeze out one more major release before the holidays. So V12 came out in the beginning of December, and this release delivered a lot of wins, including solving a few long-term requests from our users. So first, we'll talk about cross-origin testing. So Zach, let's do a quick level set. What does cross-origin mean?
So cross-origin, besides being one of the most highly requested features for Cypress ever, is a feature that allows you to visit multiple top-level domains within a single test, with the primary use case being so-called social login, so logging in with GitHub, or in this demo, Microsoft or Google login or Okta. Previously, developers, if they wanted to go across multiple domains, had to write multiple tests to kind of chain together, which was fragile and kind of a terrible developer experience. Now you can cross domain boundaries within a single test, so that frees up a lot of use cases.
Fantastic. And like you said, cross-origin testing has been in the works for a while, with multiple developers working on it over the last year and releasing the initial experimental version in 9.6. So why was this so complex for Cypress to deliver?
So Cypress runs natively in the browser. So this is awesome for a lot of reasons, because you can write your test code alongside your app code and kind of share the same objects and context and APIs. But it also brings some difficulties for testing. In this case, it is the browser's same origin policy that was a blocker. Typically, the browser cannot access other origins that don't allow explicitly to be accessed from another frame. So we had to work around this, and it did take a lot of time. We actually have an entire team at Cypress now that's devoted to working on auth workflows, and they've been solving this problem for the past year. And we've gotten it so our browser automation and our proxy layer inside of Cypress can work around these same origin restrictions in order to enable this use case. So it was complicated, but we're here now.
Definitely seems complicated. And I'll drop a link into a blog post with more nitty-gritty technical details if you all want to learn more about how this feature works. But accompanying and complementing cross-origin are two features, if you'll go to the next slide, sessions and test isolation. So Zach, what do these features do?
Sessions kind of goes hand in hand with cross-origin. It provides a first-class API that allows you to persist auth state between tests without having to use hacks or workarounds. So in these two examples, we're showing two ways that you could get a token or a cookie or login and then kind of like cache it. So you don't have to re-log in the future on other tests, which takes time and could potentially introduce flake if you're having to log in like 80 times within a test. And so this kind of goes hand in hand with something we call test isolation. Tests in Cypress have always been kind of isolated from each other, but there's still some state that could leak through to your next test. And with Cypress 12, by default, we are now going to have a strict separation between each test, where you won't see any of the local state or session storage and cookies carry over between tests anymore. This is because we're intending for you to use site.session to capture the state that you really care about preserving between tests, and then carrying that forward without any of the other corrupt.
Cypress 12 also included a fix for a long-standing problem for users running into unrecoverable detached DOM errors. So if you go to the next slide, what is a detached DOM error and how did we make these go away?
So yeah, if you have tested in Cypress with any component testing library, you've probably seen the really annoying error on the left here. Sci failed because this element is detached from the DOM. And this happens because a lot of modern component libraries like React will re-render and actually replace the DOM element with a new DOM element instead of reusing the one that was there before. So previously to Cypress 12, Cypress would just store a reference to the DOM element and cause this error if it was replaced during your test. But now with Cypress 12, we are intelligently detecting when the subject of your assertions has changed and updating it automatically. So you shouldn't get this error anymore. In this example we have on the screen here, this test code did not change at all for Cypress 12. It's just taking advantage of the new detached DOM functionality and miraculously passing, which is great. And the way this works is that we've separated Cypress commands. So everything on sci. Used to be called a Cypress command, but now we have the notion of a query. So we have commands and queries. And sci.get, for example, is a query. .find is a query. And the reason why we made this distinction is because queries are things which we can retry and rerun to get the current reference to an object. So what's happening actually behind the scenes in this test is that when we call this assert function, even though the reference is no longer correct, it doesn't matter because we're actually requerying back up the chain to find this element again to assert on it. So this should just work for the vast majority of tests to make detached DOM errors go away. Yeah.
Thank you, Zach. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see an example of a query, an assertion, and then a command there as well. Yeah, and any other things to add about kind of the difference between assertions, commands, when you'd use one over the other?
I think I mostly covered it, but if you do see errors about how, like, you might see some new errors with Cypress 12, especially if you're a plugin author or someone who has a lot of add commands about how you need to be adding a query instead. That's where this is coming from, and that's mentioned in the blog post for Cypress 12 as well.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Zach. And we'll move on. Outside of our big releases, we also delivered a lot of other. So we're going to highlight a few of our favorites, starting with WebKit support. So Zach, you built this one. Tell us about why WebKit support is such a big deal for Cypress developers.
Yeah, this, besides cross-domain, WebKit or Safari support has been in the top of our issue tracker by votes for like a very long time. The last time Cypress added support for new browsers was in Cypress 4, which is eons ago. And then we added support for Microsoft Edge and Firefox in that release. So with Cypress 10.8.0, we did add experimental support for WebKit. And WebKit, for those who don't know, is the browser engine used by Safari. This is about as close as you can get to testing directly in Safari. Safari still has some restrictions on automation to make it difficult for us to use it with Cypress. But WebKit is just as good as testing directly in Safari. So we decided to add this instead. So now we can say that you can finally test against all major browser engines and have confidence that your app will work in the real world for just about every user out there, because you can test in Chrome, Firefox, and WebKit. It is experimental and opt-in for now, but we are continuing on working on bringing it out of experimental, and it should work for the majority of tests.
All right, thank you, Zach. And in that blog post, there's more information about how to enable that experiment. So we'll head off to the next slides. These ones are all about Cypress Cloud. So we'll go to Sean and just dig into what's been going on with Cloud, formerly known as Cypress Dashboard. So Sean, first of all, in case our viewers are unfamiliar, what is the Cypress Cloud?
Oh, Sean, you're muted.
I have to forgive me. It's my first day. So essentially, I was saying that I'm pretty sure everyone's pretty familiar with the app itself. That's our testing framework for end-to-end or component testing, where you can write, execute, and debug anything that runs in the browser, right? But on top of that, we also offer our Cypress Cloud. And that's great for teams that are scaling to be able to kind of address those pain points that they may have, to make executive level decisions and to get those actionable analytics and that historical reporting. And so you'll be able to get features like automatic parallelization, load balancing, and then we have different integrations like Slack, SSO, and Jira. which leads me to the app cloud integration, where as of 10.3, you are actually able to see those analytics directly in your GUI. So previously, you kind of had to test locally, then you would have to log into your cloud and see that information in the cloud. But now directly in the cloud, you can see when a test was last updated. You can also see the last 4 of the latest runs and get that status there, whether they passed, failed, so on and so forth. And you can also see the average duration, again, those last 4 runs of how long did those tests take to run. It also leads me to my next point, if you could go to the next slide, of the integrations. So Cypress now has the ability to to integrate with GitHub and GitLab Enterprise. Previously, you could only use the cloud versions of these, but many of our other teams, many of our enterprise teams, needed to be able to use the enterprise versions of those source control managers. For various reasons, right? Like it might be for security, it might be for flexible deployment. But now you are able to integrate those if you have the business or enterprise plans. Also available for the business and enterprise plans, if you could go to the next slide, please, is the ability to see the project and billing overview, and that is actually available for all of our plans. So previously, you could only see, as a whole, how many tests you had used. But now, as an admin or owner, you can see if you have any, runaway projects. You can also download that and be able to see the specific allocation of tests, that will help with your costs, or what the percentage of that consumption is. And again, really be able to see those runaway projects. And if you could go to the next slide. Last but not least, I wanted to talk about the run overview, analytics, and recommendations. This is a sneak peek that you all are exclusively being able to see. So essentially, Cypress is completely overhauling the reporting experience that you have in the Cypress Cloud run overview page. And so this new UI is going to allow you to plot the historical run duration for all the previous runs. You'll also get timeline annotations whenever there are any changes in the runs configuration. And also it serves as it provides actionable recommendations for all of our smart orchestration features. And so again, this is a sneak peek. This has not yet been released, but look forward to a blog post coming soon to you.
John, and yeah, feel free to also, you can follow our Twitter. We'll have updates there for any that are coming out. Fantastic. All right. Well, let's go on to the next slide. So one recent update, this has kind of flown under the radar. We haven't yet posted on our blog about this, but it is the return of run all specs. So Mark, your team reintroduced this feature within Cypress. What's the story about run all specs, and can you talk about this release?
Yeah, so run all specs was a feature of Cypress versions below 10, and it was removed in 10, and really it had been kind of on our minds to remove it for a long time and come back and take a second pass at the way to implement it. And just to explain why we would have done that, it is to do with the behavior when you run all the specs as though they're kind of one giant spec. You can have some leaking of context between tests that usually run completely independently because they're kind of all combined. But especially in your before and after hooks, things could behave in very unexpected ways. For a lot of workflows, this was completely fine. I used to work at a company that used Cypress tests for just general health checks of websites. We were an agency. And I used run all specs in open mode just all the time. I didn't have anything running in CI. It was a very manual process at that company. So the little quirks of running locally in a way that's different to how your tests run in run mode and in CI didn't bother me. And as we removed it, it turned out it didn't bother a lot of people who had workflows that were accommodating to those types of differences. It still was a problem and still is a problem for people whose tests don't behave correctly It's very frustrating if you have a test that's passing in open mode locally because you're using run all and then fails in CI. So for that reason, we determined that this feature didn't really meet our standards, but our users missed it enough and reported enough to us that we still wanted to have it around. So we brought it back under an experimental flag using under the hood the same implementation as before, with, as you can see in this little slide here, a little bit more sophisticated ability to drill down. This was based on interviews with people who used it, who were really often searching a particular filter in order to highlight a single folder. So we added that layer on top of it, and we're going to continue to iterate based on feedback for the UI. But we're not going to bring it to a general availability on for everybody by default until we've solved those problems around making sure it's deterministic, so that when you use it, it's exactly the same behavior in the browser as you would expect in run mode and CI. So that for those people that were having a problem with run all specs, they can safely use it when it's GA. But if you like it and you want to opt into it now, you can. And I'm really happy because in many cases, this is a really good thing for people to do as long as they're aware of the potential pitfalls.
Thanks, Mark. All right, if we'll go to the next slide, we're back on the tooling side now, so I'll direct this to Jordan, but we've had a couple of updates this year around helping users generate tests based on in-app behaviors. So Jordan, take it away.
For sure, yeah. So if we could go to the next slide. Okay, never mind. We're on the right one. Okay. We're talking tooling though. So I would say the one thing that we focused on this year was working about test generation. So test generation was something that we thought we think is really valuable because one of the things that often gets is a trade-off for writing tests is like you don't have time to write tests. So if we can make writing tests faster, like that's great. And test generation also can lessen the barrier of entry into using testing tools like Cypress. And so one of the things that we focused on was something called the Chrome recorder, which basically we worked with the Chrome recorder team to work on basically an extension to their plugin. So when you go to Google Chrome and you hit F12, go to your developer tools, there's a recording panel. And inside the panel, you can basically record user sessions. So you can hit record and then visit a page and kind of do all the things you normally do as a user. And basically, it records every action that you take as a user as basically like a JSON file. And what we did is work with their team to be able to take the output of those recordings and basically convert those into Cypress commands. So now we have support so that you can use the Chrome recorder to record your user sessions and then export it directly into Cypress tests. So the great news is that for those of you who are either lazy like myself and look for quick ways to write tests sometimes, or maybe like new to programming, or maybe someone who's like a pure QA person who doesn't really have the experience or the desire to learn programming, this is a great solution because you can still write great tests basically just by using test generation. So that's one of the things we released. As well as we also brought back something. This is another feature that we temporarily disabled when we released Cypress 10, but Cypress Studio, which is basically the same concept as the Chrome recorder, except for this actually runs inside the Cypress app. So now there is a experimental flag that you put on, and from there, basically, you inside of the Cypress app, you can record user sessions kind of the same way you do with the Chrome recorder, and it generates the matching equivalent Cypress code for those commands and actions that you do. So those are some of the things that we've some of the efforts we put around code generation this year, and we know that hopefully it'll it'll be something you guys enjoy. We've got some great feedback so far, and hopefully we can just build on this in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. And moving right along, let's look at some resources and support that we've rolled out in 2022. So first up, if you go to the next slide, I'll direct this one to Sean. I understand that you're going to be expanding and improving our new educational platform that we launched in 2022 called Cypress Learn. So what is Cypress Learn, and what can we look forward to on the horizon?
Absolutely. So I remember to take myself off mute this time. Cypress Learn, also known as real world testing, is a 4-course curriculum that kind of teaches you like all the things you need to know in order to be able to test with Cypress, right? So what the things that you learn are testing your first application, testing foundations, Cypress fundamentals, and then also you get like advanced Cypress concepts. And like you said, I'll be working directly with the DX tooling team, and we're going to continue to update and provide new content on that. That way, it's always iterating and getting everybody ready, regardless of where they are in their web development journey.
Great, thank you, Sean. Looking forward to seeing those updates. All right, if we go to the next slide, we've seen a tremendous amount of momentum from the Angular community. Largely thanks to, again, our own Jordan Powell, who recently achieved the recognition as a Google Developer Expert. So had to mention it, Jordan, congratulations. Can you share more about what we've been doing at Cypress to serve the Angular community?
Yeah, so before I joined Cypress, I spent the past like 5 years in the Angular community. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was sort of help service the Angular community as much as I could with Cypress, because from my experience, the Angular community loved Cypress and loved working with its tooling. And so I wanted to improve that tooling and experience as best as possible. And so recently after I joined, there was the announcement of the deprecation of Protractor, which is basically Angular's built-in end-to-end kind of alternative to Cypress. And so with that deprecation, we knew that that would basically leave a lot of Angular users kind of in limbo, having to basically move their tests. And so we wanted to things. And one of them is actually to provide component testing support. So when we released 10.0, we released support for React and Vue and the meta frameworks around those. And we soon in version 10.5 released Angular support, project that I personally got to work on. It was a lot of fun and had amazing feedback, a lot of support from the community, and it's been really, really positive so far. So we're really excited about that. And we knew that providing a better component testing experience would be a way to help offload some of the core gaps for those who are using Protractor to test that type of thing previously. So we thought that releasing component testing could help sort of offload some of that burden. And then the other thing is we created a something we called the Protractor Migrator, and basically it's a learning website that we created to sort of give you a before and after kind of a snapshot. It's kind of like a git diff of on the left, you enter in your Protractor code, and then from there it gives you the equivalent Cypress code. And so again, it's not meant to be a code mod or anything like that, but it is meant to be sort of like a learning resource, so you can see the matching, the sort of one-to-one relationship between Protractor code and Cypress code and its APIs, as well as after you generate the migration, it also gives you direct links directly into our documentation for those things, so you can get a really quick look into a detailed view of all the API methods and kind of the intricacies. And the idea is that not that this is a one-stop shop to migrate your app, but a way to sort of help you along the way of migrating and making that process smoother. So those are a couple things we've been working on in the Angular community specifically, and we're excited to continue to add value moving forward.
Thank you, Jordan. And I'll give you the honor of closing us out with the last one. Although we also have
Ooh.
Eli on on board, so maybe Eli can speak to this as well. But share more about what our developer experience team has been working on for our doc site.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this one. So we've been working on converting our docs over to a new platform, and really that means a whole lot more to us internally at Cypress than it does to our community, because it's going to make it a lot easier for us to author the documentation. But some cool new things that you're going to get as part of the docs is, like, you can see it right here. It's going to have dark mode built in to the site, but we're also going to have better navigation throughout the site, better searching, being able to actually copy code out of a code example, and better tab support and all that kind of fun stuff. So we're super excited about it internally, and we're hoping that when we do launch it, probably within the next few weeks, that you all enjoy it as well.
Awesome. So keep your eyes on our docs for that update. And I'll pass it over to Ronald to share some more about what our community has been up to. We definitely consider it to be a big value for Cypress and having such a strong and active community. So Ronald, take it away.
Thanks, Jess. Very cool. So yeah, today wanted to look over some of the accomplishments of the community. Had two very special members that I also wanted to highlight and share some of their work here as well. Looking at the community at a quick overview, we had 5.6 Discord members overall this year, which showed a lot of community growth in regards to having that own Cypress Discord platform. We were able to answer a lot of questions in there, but also wanted to let the community know how much I appreciated them for the feedback and input you gave to the Discord channel. There was the How to Get Help channel that we worked on together. Some of those automations that are in Discord now for duplicate questions, directing people to the right platforms to find support, have really been very valuable to the overall experience in the Cypress community. And just wanted to thank you all for that. On the right-hand side here, wanted to congratulate the 70+ ambassadors that have got onboarded this year. It's been a very interesting year here at Cypress in regards to the support that we've shown the ambassadors. So I'm really happy to say that they've been able to be right there alongside with us with content, videos, as well as going to some of those events and speaking engagements, educating the community, advocating for Cypress, and making sure that the users here understand the product and the tool. The first person I wanted to highlight and recognize here is Philip. He made a quick video for us to share some of his overviews. I told him to keep it short because he had a ton of achievements this year throughout, but overall, he wanted to share some of those highlights for us. So here's a quick video from him.
Ronald, unfortunately, we're not getting any sound from the video.
Say that one more time.
Unfortunately, we're not getting sound from the video.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can change that.
If you share I think you can share a tab and then select Chrome. I think that will.
Okay.
Yeah, and the video itself is muted, I think, on YouTube or whatever that is.
Okay.
My name is Philip.
What about now?
I'm a Cypress ambassador.
Yep. All right, let's run it back. Here we go. All right, Philip, we got you. Here we go.
Hey everyone, my name is Philip. I'm a Cypress ambassador, and I gotta say, it's been an amazing year for Cypress. We got a bunch of major updates, and Cypress has been really moving on forward. So I've got to be part of Cypress ambassador program, basically doing it for the third year now, closing into fourth. I got a little recap, and there was a plenty actually. Highlight of my year was that I got to go to US and meet a bunch of people. I met people from Cypress, I met some other friends. Also, I spoke at 11 events, if I'm counting correctly. I'm probably not. I did 18 workshops. I've created 2 new video courses. I teach about TypeScript and also about component testing. And I also wrote a lot of blog posts and videos, including a code review podcast, which I do with Mike Cataldo. But the highlight of my year was that I have created my first plugin, which has reached over 11,000 weekly downloads in just a couple of weeks. I'm not stopping here. I'm continuing on for the next year as well. In fact, Next year is going to be amazing. I have so much cool stuff prepared for you. So be sure to check out my webpage. Be sure to stay tuned, sign up for a newsletter, because I will have new workshops, new content, and new learning opportunities for you to learn Cypress. In fact, the very next workshop is coming on January. You can find that on my page. And I will be very happy to meet you. And yeah, cheers for the next year. Hopefully it will be a good one. Pretty sure it will. See ya.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Philip. Also, the king of shameless plugs. That was great. Make sure to check out his workshops and upcoming events that Philip has going on.
Hey everyone, my name is Philip.
Oops, let me get to the next slide. All right, so the next ambassador that I wanted to also recognize was Murat. One of the big accomplishments that he had this year was creating and publishing his first Git book, which is on component testing, which was no easy feat by any means. He's worked on this tirelessly for hours, getting it out to the community, promoting it, creating tutorials, and supporting those in Discord with questions. So yeah, let's go ahead and check out his video next.
Cypress component test-driven design, why I created it, what benefits it brings to the community, and how users can leverage it. Over a year ago, I joined Extend, and here we use React for our front end. I got fascinated with React because of the functional aspect of it. I'm a huge functional programming fan, and I wanted to learn React so much better. And at that time, I saw a tier list by Gleb, and he was listing these Cypress skills that he would hire for. And I did not have component testing in there. And I was like, oh no, I have a completionist personality. I have OCD. I have to learn this. I started looking into component testing. The result of that became a very big repository with many component test examples. And I list these main resources that are supplemental to this learning as we go. After that, I realized, okay, I'm reading these React-related books, which I referenced here, React Hooks in Action, Epic React by Ken Dodds, and other ones. Why don't I reproduce these things with Cypress component testing so I can internalize that knowledge better? And the experience was phenomenal. I did 2 years of Angular development, only about a year of React. I know React so much more than I know Angular, thanks to component testing. If I had component testing while I was learning Angular, I would have known Angular so much better. So I thought people have to hear about this. This is phenomenal experience. I have to share this knowledge. I thought, okay, maybe I use a familiar application, like Tour of Heroes from Angular, rewrite it in modern React, and just go through every step as I do it, but try to apply TDD, because with Cypress component testing, that quality and the frequency of the feedback, you just fall into TDD naturally, right? So every step we are using TDD to find out more about the application and what we want to do using Cypress component testing. So the first 13 chapters are really just simple components, rendering stuff. And we are using Cypress component testing to find out more about the application every point. We just maybe mount something and then add the little div, and then from there, step by step, with every TDD red, green refactor cycles, we're incrementing and incrementing. After the first 13 chapters, the components are done. We go into more complex things about state management. We start using end-to-end tests for TDD, and at the end, we have this final application. Every code sample works as copy-pasted. So this is something I very much so require in my learning resources. And it's not there, and it drives me crazy. But in this resource, everything will work as copy-pasted. So if you can't get it to work on your own, it's there for you. You will also have the final application built in the book, but I encourage you to build it yourself to learn everything from scratch. Even today, when I want to find out or remember something I did before, for instance, let's say use memo, right? Or use callback. I can just go and see the relevant chapter in there. So the explanation will be quite short with a code example, and I'll remember immediately what it's about. So people can also use it in that fashion. I guess this is everything I wanted to talk about. You have fun and enjoy this content.
Thank you so much, Marat, for that walkthrough. Great work again. I know you are here in the audience, so if you want to go ahead and drop those links in the chat for folks that want to check that out, feel free to do so. Congratulations to you both and great achievements. Oops, trying to move on.
Amazing. Thank
Can
you,
I-
Ronald.
Can I butt in and before we wrap up, just say thank you to Philip and Marat, who are fantastic, and all of the ambassadors, and you, Ronald, for helping to maintain that ambassador community and onboard so many new people. I am so happy to see people joining the conversation, helping give early feedback on features, and just like enjoying Cypress and sharing it with their communities. It's just fantastic, and I love it. So I'm going to take a second to point out how nice it is.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. And definitely echo that. Thanks to Murat and Philip. Great having you all on board. And with that, that wraps up our planned content. I know we got through a lot of Q&A, just answering those directly in the platform. So any other questions pop up quite yet, but we do have a little bit of extra time. If anyone wants to submit those, we'll hang out until we are at the top of the hour. But go to the next slide while we're waiting for someone to type a question. Just wanted to provide some call outs for continuing to get support on Cypress. So again, we have a Discord that we are active on, as well as you'll definitely see Murat, Philip, and other ambassadors on there as well for any specific questions that you have, or if you just want to continue the conversation with us, please join us on Discord and post your questions, thoughts, comments there, and we'll be happy to see you there after the event. And then if you have questions about Cypress in general, you can always create any issues on our GitHub. And if you are a paid user, you can contact your CSM, and they will always be there to help you answer your Cypress questions. And yeah, that's it for our content. So we will continue to hang out for the next 2 minutes. But thank you all for attending. I feel like I need like some closing music or some jokes or something.
Ronald has the really cool ambassador music, but he doesn't bring it to this thing, so I don't know.
Ronald.
I mean, I could whistle something. Would that fill the void?
Yeah. Singing, whistling, and humming are accepted. Always.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Really appreciate it. See you in 2023.
Yeah, 2023.
Thanks, everybody.